Lovely. Okay, cool. So, welcome to episode 3 of my podcast, which is the future of fitness, radiance, empowerment, and wholeness. And this week I'm speaking to Raquel, who is my therapist. And all that she has taught me about, particularly we've worked a lot with inner child healing and emotional maturity and how important that is in terms of mental health and all types of wellness. And through our work together, discovering that we learn how to kind of move our bodies in yoga and kind of have all the spiritual practices and even mental practices we have, but actually there's not a lot of support or kind of awareness of how important it is to work with our emotions, and there's not that many tools out there that people are using to help with that. So I thought then this would be really important to share all of the amazing things that Raquel teaches me. And I always tell my clients that they need to have a session with you. But can you maybe introduce yourself more in terms of your background and kind of maybe how you would classify yourself and your profession?
Okay, so my background is I'm a clinical psychologist, so I study, but actually I think my path started when I was a teenager, when I was 15, and I started practicing yoga and meditation. So I think it started there. And then after my degree, I started working as a clinical psychologist, but I didn't feel fulfilled. So I put psychology a little bit aside, and I started teaching yoga and meditation. I did that for a while, but then something was missing, as you said, and I started studying again. And then I found transpersonal, which is the last area of psychology that combines spirituality with clinical psychology and sees the human being as physical, emotional, mental, but also spiritual being. So, and then when I found transpersonal, I was like, oh, this is my field. And then I put the teaching aside and now work as a transpersonal therapist.
So it's blending, and I saw on your website you're blending ancient practices with modern practices, which is exactly what I kind of have written in different places as well. And that feels like the most holistic, bringing like the best of everything, rather than leaving some things behind. So you're blending some shamanic work as well, maybe in some places as well.
Yes, definitely. I do that, especially in retreats.
Yeah.
So what I realized is that this ancient practice brought me in contact with the more spiritual field. So because I always remembered myself as asking these questions: what are we? What I'm doing here? Who am I? I always had these questions very present, and religion didn't give me those answers, but science didn't also. So I was like, so I think that was why yoga called me. But what I realized with my own personal path, but also my clients, my yoga students, was that yoga somehow was not enough. So because we are very complex, and the human being of nowadays is not the same as 5,000 years ago when yoga was born, or even the shamanic practices. So yoga for me is shamanism, because shamanism is the first step, the human step for looking for spiritual meaning and for healing. So the first movement for healing or for spiritual quest is what we call shamanism. So every societies, every tribes, they have their own shaman, their own healer, whatever we want to call it. So psychology, yoga, medicine, Reiki, Feng Shui, everything comes from shamanism. Shamanism is the source. So, and in the world, you have different tools, different ways. So what I realized is somehow the modern human needs therapy. That's why for me, transpersonal brings everything together, because sees every layers of the human being, because the modern human is so complex nowadays that we need all of these tools to reconnect again with who we are.
And that's something that I realized when I worked with my clients, because they, we would see physical changes, and I would teach people how to do things. I would educate them on, say, the best way to eat or the correct breathing technique, but yet they still keep being pulled back into patterns. And so it was out of my wanting to help people better that I was like, it's definitely something going on in past trauma or psychological patterns that I don't have the skill yet to tap into to help people kind of unpack. And it's quite difficult, because when people come to you, they just are focusing on the external changes, and to go, well, actually, we, rather than doing this squat or this plank, we actually need to look at what's going on inside your head, because really it's quite easy to do yoga poses and things like that in a sense, but you're not going to have the lasting changes until you change your emotional and mental patterns and blocks as well. And so I found that with you, I had really quick changes when we did inner child work, which a lot of people have spoken about, and but I've never done before. And so maybe you can just share a little bit about inner child healing, because I love it.
I put it in this way. So first of all, I think any tool is a tool to start. Food, Ayurveda, yoga, whatever, it's a tool to start. And yes, most of the time we start with the symptoms: anxiety, depression, stress. And then if we allow ourselves, we can go inner and inner and inner and deeper. So because there is always layers and layers and layers to unfold. And what I realized when I was a yoga teacher was that when people start, the body starts to move, the breath starts to move, so things would come up. And even in the end, when they were doing shavasana, they would start crying, and a lot of emotion would come, anger and a lot of stuff. And they would say, what I do with this? It was then that I decided, okay, I want to go back to psychology, because these things are coming up, and people need to know how to deal with it. So inner child work. So I think we live in a society that doesn't know how to deal with emotions. I think we have, in terms of mental and cognition, we are very developed already. But in terms of emotions, I think we are like teenagers, or even a little bit less.
Yeah.
And we can see this, how we interact with children. Like when you see a child crying, oh, it's nothing. Or when you see a child with anger, you say bad girl, bad boy. So we don't know how to support and how to sustain emotions. And Our emotions in general speak about normally what we feel in the present. It's not about the presence. The present is about the past. So normally our emotions are very linked to the past, and of course with our inner child and our inner teenager and our younger self parts. So when we and when we are childs, they are very dependent and they are very, very vulnerable. They are very sensitive. They are more connected with their emotions because they don't have their brain and cognition so developed. So they are very connected with emotions. And if we or the child don't have an adult that are able to support and to sustain and to explain how to deal with their emotions, they will use more primitive ways to deal with it, which is repression, numbness. And so what happened is nowadays we still cope with our emotion in that way, very immature. We don't know how to deal with them. We still repress, we still numb ourselves. And I normally say, if you want to practice meditation and yoga to feel good, this is not the way. Because what yoga and what meditation and what all these spiritual techniques, what they are meant to be is to put yourself in contact with what you have inside of you. So if you have a lot of emotional material repressed, that is what will come.
Yeah.
So in the end, you will feel good, yes, but it's a process. First, you need to go through all those layers of emotion that are not processed and integrated. And when we do this inner child work that we're talking about, we are doing this integration work with these emotions that were not processed or integrated or felt, or they were repressed, they were not. So they are in our unconsciousness, there in a box and stored in our body. And what happened is, in our daily life, especially our relationship, they will trigger those buttons and then it will come up. So when it will look like the spoon on the table, but actually it's not about the spoon on the table, it's about all those emotions and feelings that were not addressed and that were not recognized.
I think that one of the best things you said to me, which really stuck and I can use all the time, is to use the situation you're in as a way of like healing, or to show you what is like what wants to be kind of cleared out of you. I think you just said, just use this situation, and what does it trigger in you? So what does that say about how you feel about yourself or what's happened in your past? And then everything we encounter, especially the uncomfortable things, becomes like something that you can feel empowered by rather than just move away from.
Yeah, everything can be a master.
Yeah,
Everybody can be a master for you to learn something about yourself.
And I think, and also you said that you have to do it like obsessively, every time it comes up, or
at least for a period of time. Yes. I don't see it in my personal journey or with my clients that one time technique will do all the job. Yes, you can have some aha moments, some insights that can change a lot of things, but it's a process, because it's like we are like a software, a program, and we need to reprogram ourselves, our way of thinking, our way of feeling, and our relationship with ourselves. So it's a daily work, definitely.
And I know I have experienced myself that I had a situation come up which I felt very triggered, and then I used the situation and kept kind of reassuring my inner child, as you would tell me, and kind of giving her the whatever she really needed to hear. And then a long time afterwards, a little bit time afterwards, this situation came up, and it had the trigger was nowhere near as if like overwhelming for me. So I was like, oh wow, this really does, it works, and it's
It does.
changing the energy inside your body.
Yes, because so what creates energy is thoughts. It's our thoughts that creates energy, that creates emotion. And the thing is, we have a lot of inner beliefs, which are thoughts. Beliefs are thoughts that we thought about for a long time, so they became a belief. So, but we have a lot of these core beliefs. And when we work with the inner child, we are working with the core beliefs. So if the child, for example, thinks there's something wrong with her because she's feeling the way she's feeling, because she needs to be recognized for her sadness, for example. And if you go there doing like this time traveling and you assure her that there's nothing wrong for her to feel angry in that situation, actually is very normal, and that's nothing wrong with her, you are changing your core belief.
Yeah.
And this will affect a lot. And because our brains, they don't distinguish between what is subjective reality, inner reality, of outer reality. So if with your brain, with your imagination, you are talking with your child, for your brain, for your body, you're really talking with your child. It's like you're doing a time travel. And for me, this is shamanism. Because
Yes.
shamanism is about traveling in the inner worlds. So and your body, when you do this, will release the chemicals as you are actually being involved in that situation. So there is a lot of things going on just because you're imagining it.
And that's in some ways you're learning how to be your own mother. So
Exactly.
you're graduating from staying in the child when everybody else needs to save you, and it's to then becoming mature and being able to soothe yourself
Exactly.
and feel your emotions, and kind of, because you're the inner adult is talking to your inner child.
Yes, definitely. When you do inner child work, you put yourself in the adult place. So there is some disidentification with the child. So
Yeah.
And so you put yourself in the adult place, and as an adult, you have a lot of resources, inner
Yeah.
and outer. And if you're in your adult place, you know how to use it, how to
Yeah.
use your intuition, how to use your inner wisdom, how to soothe yourself, and and understand what do you need, and look for ways, inner and outer, to fulfill those needs. While if you're in the child place, childs are more vulnerable, and they don't have self-awareness, they are not aware of their own needs. They need adults around them who are aware of their own needs to help them to fulfill those needs. So when
Yeah.
you do this, you're disidentify with your inner child, with your child. So you put yourself in an adult place, so you will be more abundant. You will connect with all of these inner resources, and of course, able to learn how to soothe yourself, how to hold your own emotions and soothe your emotion, which in the end, you can give the image of your child, because it's easier when we put that image to help us.
And what do you think? Is there a point that people get to where they decide, oh, actually, now I need to start doing this work on myself? Now is the time. Do you think things happen to people, or is it just a bit random why people then suddenly decide to do work on themselves? Because some people maybe never do this kind of work and live their whole life never having matured through their child, and others then come to a point of realization that it's only up to them who can do the work on themselves. I think Yeah, that's a big question for me. I'm not sure what that is.
So, like, your question is what triggers people to do the work?
Yeah.
I think it's suffering.
Mm.
I think it's pain, like emotional, deep emotional pain is when people are suffering and in pain that they look for. I can give my own example. I do this work because I was in emotional pain. So, and for me, I don't know why, but I always knew that there was nothing wrong with me. I was fortunate because I knew always that it was not about me, but there's something that I needed to figure out. Like,
Yeah.
I always knew that life should be something great. And if I wasn't feeling like that, was because something was missing. And I always looked for ways to understand my suffering and my pain and how to work with it. And I think it was because of that that I looked in so many places, and in the end, I ended up blending everything
Yeah.
because everything in the end helped.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody said that to me the other day, a new client. She said, "You seem to like know how to do all this stuff. Like, how do you have it all together?" And I was like, "Well, because I know exactly how it feels. It comes through experience, and
Exactly.
that's the kind of the best. That's yeah, the most authentic way I think to teach is because you've experienced it
You did the part.
yourself. You
Yeah.
can tell the difference, I think, between, and no judgment, but somebody who's just done a yoga teacher training and who is reciting their what they've just been taught on the yoga teacher training, whereas somebody who's kind of lived through their say yoga practice and is now teaching from a place of experience and personal understanding
Yes.
gives so much depth. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
Okay, so because one of the questions is, tell me about your relationship with your body and your journey with it.
Um, I think in general, I always had a good relationship with my body. I think when I was a child, I did dance, I did ballet, and when I was a teenager, I started doing yoga, and I always have the body that fits in those places. So I was flexible, I was thin. So I think in general that did I always matched the expectations. So I think
Yeah.
that helped me. But since I was a child, I was diagnosed with asthma, and I was always very small and thin, and somehow the environment always gave me the feedback that somehow I was weak.
Mm,
But inside of me, I didn't felt like that. Maybe because I was going through some difficult situations that asked me to be strong. I had to be somehow a strong kid to deal with some situations. So it was like I didn't felt like weak, but somehow my body always gave me this feedback there was limitations.
mm,
If I laugh too much or if I run too much as a kid, I will have a crisis. An asthma attack. I will become without breath, and for a long time, I saw this as weakness and as limitations, but now I see it actually as wisdom from my body, because somehow my body always told me, "Hey, you have limits, you you have limits." And for example, I am a person that if I had to work like like obsessively from 9 to 6, or if I was like, my body would became sick.
yeah.
So I was never very resistant to a lot of pressure, a lot of work, and I thought I had a problem because I wasn't like the other people that did a lot, and I didn't have that energy. But now I see it as, no, this was my body saying, no, you need to take rest, you need to take care of yourself, you need to be aware of the foods you eat. Like I went through a very deep journey with food. And so, like, I think my body always gave me this feedback that, hey, you need to be very aware of what you eat, like in terms of food, in terms of environment, in terms of thoughts, in terms of everything. So it's like this paradox of something that I thought it was weakness. Actually, it was my body since the beginning saying to me, like, I'm a sensitive being, so be aware of what you ingest, what is that you put inside of yourself.
And I think a lot of people, women, have stuff like that with their bodies, but they don't have the awareness of the challenge that their body is presenting to them is actually the wisdom of their body telling them how to change. But it's very difficult to get that across to people, because it's a very personal experience, and sometimes it's just you have to realize it for yourself, or you get to maybe a crisis or something, unfortunately. But if I do think 100%, if your body is in pain or not functioning well, of course it's something to do with lifestyle, how we're treating it, how we're repressing emotions or trauma. But that often is kind of a last resort for a lot of people, isn't it? It's from the outside in that we try to change our bodies.
It's always about environment. Even emotions is environment for our own cells. So it's always about environment and in what environment we are. Inner, with thoughts and emotions, or outer. And the thing is, we live in a society that just look to the symptoms and have medicine, like remedies for each symptom. So we don't go deeper. We don't see diseases as a lifestyle, as an environmental problem. We see as there's something wrong with our bodies, with our chemicals, with our, it's your liver that is not functioning well. It's your brain that is not functioning well. Take this. Instead of looking at, no, this is a holistic, this is lifestyle. Of course, there are things where traditional medicine, it's super important. Like if I break a bone, like, yes, I go there. But most of the things that we have nowadays, even the asthma that I was talking about, it's environmental, it's lifestyle. And I think it's the way how we see things, cause and effect. It's like, oh, this is something in your body that is not functioning, and because also that it's easier to take the pill than to change the behavior. And especially when we talk about food and things like that are very traditional, that are very cultural, like it's the way how people connect with each other. And so it's really hard, because we really need to transcend where we are, like, and go to new places, to the unknown, and people are afraid of that.
And I would say,
who will I become if I stop seeing the news, for example?
Well, I was just going to say that sometimes being in pain or sick to some extent, we also kind of we get a payoff from it. Like it gives us permission to still be in the victim, or still be in the child, to be taken care of, to have a rest, you know, because I know this is from myself. I'm like, oh, if I just got sick, then I could like have the whole week off work and I would have full permission, you know, because I don't feel like working right now. So I'm kind of inviting it in as well.
Yes. So I think these are two aspects here in this question. One is the self-responsibility. So it's easier to be in the childish place where I'm not responsible for my life. Right? Because if I see myself as the responsible for my life and for my health and for my wealth and for everything, I will have to take the steps towards what I want. So it's easy to say, oh, I am not responsible. My parents, my husband, the system, everyone are responsible for what is happening to me. So this is the first thing: is we don't put ourselves in the responsible place, because it's easier. But also because we don't have a good relationship with our more vulnerable and dependent places. Like we all have everything inside of us. So inside of me, I have a dependent inner place, but I have the independent also. I have the vulnerable and I have the stronger. So it's always about this and this, and not this or this. Our minds, they have this way of thinking, oh, I'm just this or I'm this.
One
No,
or the other,
actually, I'm both. And when I hold all of this wholeness, I realize, no, I also have the need for contact. I also have the need for being taken care of. I also have the need for rest. I also have the need for not doing nothing. So, and when I'm at peace with this, I make time in my life to fulfill those needs. So I don't need excuses, unconscious excuses to fulfill those needs. I am aware of them, and consciously I choose to take care of them.
Yeah.
It's very different.
And when we say that all of this is our responsibility, I feel like some people might jump to the conclusion of like blaming somebody because they got sick or they have this and that. And it's hard to say that actually it's not, there's no blame in the situation. It's just a different perspective.
So the blame is the child, the one who blames it, or the victim is the child. And it's fine, because the child was the victim, the child was the vulnerable, so we need to recognize them. And when we do this, we put ourselves in the adult place and we realize, oh, okay, wait. Okay, when I was a child, I didn't have the resources to deal with it, but now I'm the adult and I can go for it. So it's always about, okay, recognizing that, okay, I have this, but I have the power. So it's all, in the end, it's always about awareness and choice. I can choose. I can choose to be the victim, and sometimes it's hard. It's like we are addicted. We are addicted to those places, and sometimes I have times where I think, oh, I'm in the victim place. I'm in those victim thoughts, and and they are very, sticky. Oh, it's hard to this identity.
That's good.
Hard to identify. So what I do in myself, and I allow, okay, today it's hard to don't identify. It's because, okay, my child, that inner place needs some attention. It's fine, but I know that it's not the full truth. I know I also have an inner power place inside myself. Maybe today I'm not connected with it, but I know I have. So I allow myself to be in this place, knowing that if I allow the energy to move, if I allow myself to be there, the energy eventually will move and I will move forward, and I will be able to connect with other inner places.
You said to me once, again, another really helpful thing is to let the emotion run its full course before perhaps responding, and just allow yourself to feel it all the way through. and then you can, say if you're triggered in a relationship with your partner, that was really helpful, because then you feel feel it all, feel it all, feel it all, and then you can come back to them and you realize, oh, actually, like, I actually don't care that much about winning this argument anymore.
Yes. Because emotions are water, so they're like waves, and they have like a trigger, they go, they have a peak, and if we allow ourselves to go to move through it, they will end and something else will come. So if we make decisions when we are in the peak of emotion, we are not aware of the full situation, because emotions are energy, and energy have information. So if we base our judgment of our behavior based on the peak of the emotion, we didn't allow all of it, so we don't have the full information and the full wisdom to do whatever we should do. So it's of much, and actually when we most of the times when we are in the peak of the emotion and we want to argue and we want to it's projection. It's because we are not able to sustain that emotion. It's because that emotion is really hard to be with, and we want to project to the other person. So we project and then we feel better. But this is a childish way, it's a more immature way to deal with the emotion. So when we allow ourselves to be with it, and so it goes to full circle, then we have more wisdom to deal with the situation. And also choice, and especially we have more choice.
Yeah. And for some people who are more emotionally suppressed, which is definitely not me, how would be a good way for people to start to kind of open themselves up? Because some people might not even know, I guess, that they're emotionally suppressed, but what would be the starting point?
So when you suppress emotion, means you suppress everything. You suppress anger, you suppress sadness, but you also suppress love, you also suppress enjoyment, you always suppress the good stuff. So if you feel like somehow you're numb and you're always like this, probably it's because you suppress stuff. If you feel like I know people that never fall in love, you know? So for me, it's like you're suppressing, because when you suppress the bad stuff, you suppress the good stuff also. I saw this with my son. Like my son, he's 6 years old, and he's the kind of child that he's always saying, "Mama, I love you." He's always expressing his love, but he also expressed his anger and his sadness. And one day I realized he was expressing his anger, and I realized, oh wow, it's because you are able to express your anger that you are able to express your love also. It was very, in front of me. So if you feel it's like if you feel like you don't feel, enjoyment, joy, and love, probably it's because you're suppressing your emotions. And ways to start working with that, breath work is a great way. So normally people who suppress their emotions, they are very rational. So body work, of course, would be amazing, because they will come from the brain to the body. And when they become, when they start connecting with the body, everything will come. I had a lot of students, yoga students. So I used to teach Ashtanga, which is a very strong practice. So that happened a lot. People that were very, high tech and very, especially men, they were very, very rational and very, they start doing, and then they start realizing things like listening to the birds singing, seeing the beauty of nature. They become more aware because they came to the body. They become more sensitive to the senses. What they were seeing to what they were hearing. So I would say that people that feel that they are more repressed in terms of emotions is body works, definitely.
That's interesting. That makes me think, if somebody doesn't particularly like things that are sensual, like massage and things like that, that makes me think that they are very rational and they
Yes,
don't, there's definitely a, yeah,
they are cut with the bodies. Yes, definitely. And yeah,
yeah. And so good ways to do body work is massage, reflexology, any other types?
yoga, dance, Pilates, whatever brings
Okay,
you.
anything physical then
Yes,
with
yes,
breath work.
yeah. Breath work
With,
is it's a really good practice also because breath work will take you out of your mind and bring you
yeah.
to the body and be in touch with a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Mm, mm. And okay, so one last question for you is, what does self-love mean to you?
For me, the highest form of self-love is when I'm able to be with myself when I think I'm not lovable,
Mm,
when I'm behaving like a child, when I'm, like grumpy or, being like a toddler that is demanding, when I'm more into contact with
mm,
those selfish and also childish places,
mm-hmm.
that I also have. And for some reason, something
No, what? No, you
of course,
didn't.
and that something triggered me, and I'm able to stay with myself and put
Mm,
my hand on my heart and say, hey, I see how you feel needy, or I see how you feel demanding, or I see how you feel selfish right now, I see how you feel rejected, abandoned, whatever, and it's okay, there's nothing wrong with you,
yeah,
it's just fine. So I think for me is this presence with wherever is with inside of me, and I'm able to stay there and be present and call for these more compassion and loving inner voices.
yeah,
So for me, this is the highest level of self-love. And I think everything that you do can come from a place of self-love or come a place of self-punishment.
yeah,
It will depend of the presence that you are with. Like, I can eat this because this will make me thin, or this because this will, or I
mm,
can eat this because this is nourishment for my body. So
yeah,
a lot of behaviors, I can do the same behavior coming from a place of self-love or coming from a place of self-punishment or self-hate or whatever. So it's very subtle,
yeah,
but from the presence and from this which space I'm coming.
yeah. And I feel like those are the times when you have the biggest inner shifts, is when you can pull yourself into that space of self-love in your most unlovable times.
Yeah.
And I found it helps you to love other people
Yes.
deeper and holistically, rather than just when they do things for you or when they're pleasant. You can uh still love them in their messiness as well, but
Yeah.
you have to do it because you can do it for yourself. It always starts with yourself, it just does.
Everything's sad because everything is a reflection. So
Yeah,
whatever you don't accept in yourself, you won't accept in the other. It works like this. So I normally say that enlightenment and unconditional love comes from integrating your shadow and not from identification with light. So
yeah,
it's when you do your shadow work and you're able to embrace and bring compassion for these more shadow, dark inner places that you think you cannot love, is when you can bring light and love to those inner places of yourself, that you can bring honestly that to the world and
mm,
really be present with those dark and shadow places of other people.
mm. And people feel that in you as your presence as well. people feel that more grounded kind of whole energy that you're bringing to people when you kind of can hold two in one. And that's a different concept for our societies, to be able to have two perspectives at the same time to hold, rather than fixate on one or the other.
Definitely.
But it's definitely possible. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just think, it's like there is no one truth. There is so many truths as people in this universe and in this world. So it's about learning how to hold your inner truth and also the inner truth of the other. How can we be together in our uniqueness? I think the great task we have nowadays is to look inside, especially because there is so many information right now, so many opinions, so many. I think it's more and more important for us to go inside and see, okay, but what is my inner truth? Who am I, and what is my inner truth? And realize that we all have our inner truth, our uniqueness, and this is what makes the world rich, is for us to bring this. And and when I accept my inner truth, I will accept your inner truth, and then we'll be able to make the dance between our differences and our uniqueness, and life will be more rich and abundant.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for sharing so much wisdom, and I think that lots of people who I'm gonna tell to listen to this, we're gonna gain a lot from it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, my dear.